I don't even know where to start from all of the things that have been said that are just wrong.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is the 13th of January. Lucky Tuesday 13. And you know what? Sort of interesting. John Combest. Good morning, John, to you.
Good morning to you, Brad.
We had a heart-to-heart conversation on the air yesterday after we finished the show. And he said, Brad, I don't know if I can keep doing the show anymore. I can't kid you about your gallbladder anymore. So I don't know if I really want to go on anymore. That's what John told me.
I was constantly battering at it. And the hardest part, I don't mean to be a martyr here, but in order to pick and poke at that gallbladder, do you realize how much scar tissue I had to go through?
Quite a bit. I'm telling you. And I still have emotional scar tissue from that whole situation with you, John. So just put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Hey, listen, don't blame me for what your mom did to you, Brad.
That's right. She never listened to me on the radio, and I'll never forgive her. Okay, that is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. I spell it because you put a John on the front and a .com in the back, and you get johncombest.com. An amazing website. Done it for 24 years. Never missed a single day. It's just like the Drudge Report, but for state of Missouri. And it's interesting stuff. Nothing fancy. If you go there, you'll see a bunch of links. Click on the link, and it'll take you to what you're interested in. And what we do is, in this show, we bring in this fine gentleman. Your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we count him down, and we start off with...
In third place.
I'm glad you led with your, I'm glad you led with your gallbladder today, because in the agreement I have with your doctors, I'm charged with the task of keeping your blood pressure high. And when I press on certain hot buttons, one of them is the Francis Howell School District, so-called cultural wars, and even a cameo by your favorite Francis Howell School Board member. Let's get into it. The inimitable Monica Obradovic from the Post-Dispatch writes, dozens of book challenges strain the Francis Howell District, set stage for election. Now, this story, has a fantastic angle to it that I never knew about school districts, or particularly the Francis Howell School District. If you, Brad Hildebrand, or let's say any resident of the Francis Howell School District, wanted to object to a book, or in fact, did object to a book that was carried by one of the school libraries, you could force the Francis Howell School District to bring a review committee together. And Monica brings this point out because, well, I'll just read her lead. The Francis Howell School District is grappling with a record surge of book challenges, which may require hundreds of volunteers and thousands of hours of work to vet the titles. So to cut to the chase here, if you object to a book, the school district must form a review committee, and every challenged book gets its own review committee. Brad, do you see anything wrong with this process?
John, be honest. This whole thing is ridiculous. This thing has just gotten out of control. And I say, hold on a minute, I got to clear my throat here. As the son of a former school librarian, my mother at Kirby Junior High, just shut the libraries down. I mean, telling you. Because, first off...
because they cause too much trouble, right?
Well, but here's the problem. Okay, let's say the library was filled with Super 8 movie films, okay? And get my point, John? Who's going to go in there?
I do, yeah.
Who's going to go in there and watch a Super 8 movie film? First off, they don't have any sound to them. Second off, what do you have to play it on? You can't find a player anymore. You can't find a projector. They don't exist anymore, okay? The same thing with books. Books are dead. I'll be honest with you. Books are dead. So just close the stupid place down. Turn it into, I don't know, a hookah lounge or something like that, or
just maybe a mini dispensary.
There you go, a mini dispensary for the kids.
And that way parents in the carpool lane could actually just jump in
real
quick, they can get their hit, and then go back out to the carpool lane. They can come in. They can... Well, let's, pardon me for interrupting, Brad, but I do want to finish what Monica puts in early in the story, which I think gives the valuable context and maybe the buried lead here. The challenges come amid the backdrop of an upcoming school board election. One of the two parents challenging the book. So there's two big figures in this story. One of the two parents is a candidate for one of the board's 3 open seats on the school board. And the second is the new president of a PAC seeking to elect outspoken conservatives. So we've discussed Francis Howell Families before. They're the conservative PAC that supports conservative school board candidates. The gentleman's name is Dustin Beardsley, and he has asked the district to evaluate 53 books for appropriateness. And parent Lauren Greenwood, who's actually running for the school board. So you have Dustin, who runs the PAC, Lauren, who's running for school board, and she's challenged 7 books in September. So Greenwood's point, if you skip to the bottom of the story by Miss Obradovic, Greenwood's point seems to be that the review process is cumbersome. And, you know, she says that she discovered that there were a number of LGBTQ plus themes in these books. She said they're completely age inappropriate. And she says that the volume of the challenges reflects a deeper issue, that too many inappropriate books were allowed into school in the first place. Now, I teased earlier, Brad, excuse me, I teased earlier that your favorite school board member, Jane Pushkar, has a cameo in the story. And what Pushkar does during school board meetings is she will read excerpts from some of the objectionable books, what she considers to be objectionable. And then other folks, you could consider them more moderate or progressive on the school board, will object to the words she's using in the school board meeting. And Ms. Pushkar says, well, that's exactly the point. If these books are too inappropriate to say the words in them at a school board meeting, why are we letting youth in our schools read these books? Now, Brad, to be fair, you've made that point about other cases throughout the country. And so I do think Jane makes a pretty good point here. But I guess the catch of this whole thing, and what was surprising to me, is every time anyone objects to a book, the Howell folks have to put together a separate independent review committee to review that book, which I think we would all agree is just nonsense.
John, at the risk of alienating part of our audience, God save us from the super conservatives. I'm telling you, I'm so sick of this stuff because of the fact that my point being, here's a story. We're talking about this. This is in the Post-Dispatch and talking about school board meetings. When's the last time they talked about making the kids more intelligent, educating them better, expanding their minds, showing them the big universe that they're about ready to step into, to give them maybe a little bit of hints as to maybe you don't want to go to college. Maybe you want to be a trade person. Maybe you want to fix HVAC systems. No, they're stuck in these stupid books in the library. And it's people like Jane Pushkar who drive me bat you-know-what crazy. I to the point where it's like, okay, give it a rest. And my solution is shut the stupid library down. I mean, it's simple as that. And the interesting part of this is, John, you know what the numbers, the statistics I would like to see? What's that? I would like to see how many people go in the library on a given day and how many books get checked out. I got a feeling it's like not many. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. As a parent, I go in there a lot and I get Ramona Quimby books. And I get a lot of Encyclopedia Brown. Because when I'm going through, pardon me, I have the Brad Hildebrand throat issue today. When I'm going through campaign finance reports, I'm inspired by Encyclopedia Brown, and I like to think of myself as my own gumshoe. Now, Brad, in defense of Jane Pushkar, I think Jane and others would say that they agree with you in principle, and that's ever the more reason why they need to get all the culture war stuff, all the SEX UAL stuff out of our library so that kids can focus on reading and writing and arithmetic.
No. I disagree with you, John. They don't give a poop about that anymore. It's all about books in the library. And the thing you just brought about this. Let's talk about this. I've got a couple different things to talk about this morning in my top 3. But one of them is the fact that we can't get anything done anymore because of this kind of stuff. We've ground to a halt. Things have just gotten to the point where we're like, here we go again. What's the news stories? Oh, the people in Forest Hill. Hold on a minute.
The people in Forestell, they don't want a data center is what you're
Nobody
about to say.
Nobody wants a data center, but yet they want their internet to be real fast. You know what I mean? It's one of those crazy things. They don't want a cellular tower in their neighborhood, but yet they want their cell phone to work. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. You know what? I got to clear my throat, so I'm going to go with number 2. I got more to say, but I'm just going to shut up.
Up a notch to number 2.
It's the most wonderful time of the quarter. Rumors are flying and candidates lying to every reporter. It's the most wonderful time of the quarter. Brad, I love this time of year. It happens at least 4 times a year, a bit more frequent in an election year as we get close to the primary and as we get close to the general. But it's the time of the year when quarterly campaign finance reports are filed with the Missouri Ethics Commission. And I like to compare it to quarterly earnings from publicly traded companies here in the United States. Because during the year, during the quarter, on most days, companies that are publicly traded come out and say, hey, we're using AI. We're a shoe company, but we're going to use AI for our inventory. That's the ticket. And they make excuses and they tell narratives and stories and spin some yarns. And then at the quarterly earnings call, they have to talk about reality. And that's the same thing with political candidates. All year long, they talk about, I'm getting so much so much support from my district. I ran into a guy at the supermarket the other day. He said he's a Democrat, but he's voting for me even though I'm a Republican. We're going to win this campaign. No, you're not, idiot. You're running in a Democrat district and you're going to lose and waste everybody's time. But I digress, Brad. Let's get to some of the early campaign finance revelations. This is brought to us by Jake Croson from the Missouri Times, the Whispering Gallery, a race of interest to a lot of folks in our listening area. Brian Williams sees a $300,000 quarter. Jake writes, Senator Brian Williams announced yesterday that he raised a staggering $341,000 in the previous quarter, so that would be October through December, for St. Louis County Executive. So in total, Brad, he raised 89 for his campaign committee, 188 for his PAC called STL Co, and then 63 grand for his B PAC. Combined with his previous cash on hand, that puts Senator Williams at $869,000. Brad, I see a 69 and I get a little excited. Pause. $869,000 in total cash on hand for the upcoming quarter. Now, I did a little research before we went on the air. And as you know, Jake Zimmerman, the county assessor, who you referred to by the technical term as a jerkazoid, end quote, is sitting on $316,000. We'll do a mnemonic device. You know, Steve Austin said, Stone Cold Steve 316 says, how about Jake 316 says? He's going to lose. Jake has $316,000 cash, which is a lot of money. And you can run, at least for a while, on $300K. So it's not like Jake is sitting with an empty bank account. Now, at the risk of getting ahead of ourselves, Brad, I'll also point out that I checked this morning on the Missouri Ethics Commission website, and reports are due by 5 p.m. on Thursday, which is the 15th, pardon me. And none of the candidates for St. Charles County Executive, Jason Law, Steve Ellman, Bill Eigel, none of those candidates as of 6 a.m. this morning had filed their campaign finance reports. So a huge quarter for Brian Williams. He is, of course, still the presumptive Democratic nominee.
So you think he's going to do it?
Yeah. So I've been pretty consistent about that, Brad, for a year now. And Brian Williams was always going to be the heir apparent to Sam Page. Now, Sam, even when Sam was still pretending in the fall that he was going to run for re-election, Brian was always going to come in and win this race. He's still in that spot. And I'll point out, for transparency purposes, that I think I'm going to end up being wrong about the fact that I said that Sam Page's team would be able to find a viable patsy to take on Brian Williams, to take the loss against Brian Williams. I thought that the team would get together and find some mushmouth simp in South County to be able to do it. But the credible folks who could run, folks who are already elected officials or who already have a constituent base, those guys aren't going to do it. Like, competent candidates aren't going to take a loss against Brian. So I think Sam Page's team won't be able to find a patsy. And some of those folks are just going to, say, hey, Brian's going to be the guy and let's just get on board.
Interesting. Ready for number one?
Yeah, let's do it.
And here they are. Number one.
She said stars couldn't get me in a car. I don't know what type of man you are. Check out my Spanx. They're lacy like clay. I got a glimpse of your government check. SBA. Fat cells in Cori's yacht. Getting crushed by Ozempic. Fat cells in Cori's yacht. Getting crushed by Ozempic. With apologies to LL Cool J and his 1993 song. Pink cookies in a plastic bag getting crushed by buildings. Two great stories in the last 5 days from Joe Holliman of the Post-Dispatch. It's been 5 weeks since we've talked about Cori Bush. I went back and looked. You know, I mentioned the fact that she should just come out and say that she's been using Ozempic. That's why she looks as good as she does. And I think she could set a really healthy model for people who are trying to lose weight. So that's been 5 weeks since we talked about her. And a lot has happened in the Cori Bush versus Wesley Bell campaign since then. So what I want to point to are the two Joe Holliman stories. One was from last week and one is from this week. And the punchline of all this is that Cori Bush's husband was set for trial. And as Holliman reported last week, his team was like, whoa, judge. We need a little bit more time. We're not ready to go starting on Monday. We need a little time. And the judge said, no way. I'll read to you what Holliman writes in today's paper. After a judge refused to delay proceedings, the felony trial for former Rep. Cori Bush's husband began Monday in federal court. Courtney Merritt's III, who worked for Bush's campaign both before and after marrying her in February 2023, is charged with 2 counts of mail fraud. Prosecutors allege that Merritt, who's 46, filed fraudulent applications in 2020 and 2021 that allowed him to collect more than $20,000 in government money under 2 SBA programs. Merritt's lawyers asked for a continuance last week so they could get more discovery information and address the prosecution's possible disclosure of tax information. Prosecutors countered that the motions were simply a delay tactic. And I'll read one more sentence before we get into the discussion, Brad. Judge Gia M. Cobb, that's C-O-B-B. You know her great-grandfather, Ty Cobb, Brad. You remember Ty Cobb?
Yeah, he was a relative to Corn, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. And his aunt invented a terrific salad. She was appointed to the federal bench, not the aunt, but Gia Cobb, was appointed to the federal bench by Joe Biden, denied the request, and ruled that the trial would go on as scheduled. So as I read this last week, Cori Bush's team, and you could presume they're all in the same team, right? Cori Bush's team doesn't want public disclosure of Courtney Merritt's tax records. Now, why would they be so objecting, if that's a verb, why would they be so objecting to having his tax information released?
Because it's the smoking gun? Maybe is that what it is?
I don't know, Brad. And I mean, it's easy to speculate, and it might be unfair to speculate. I don't know. It certainly seems, you know, if in Holliman's previous column last week, he noted that Cori Bush's husband's attorneys cited the fact that there was a congressional primary this year. So there was no reason to disclose this tax information, which is pretty much just saying, hey, look, we don't want our political opponents to use this information against our client's wife. Now, what's in there that they don't want people to see?
You know, this whole thing is so bizarre. I mean, you know, and the whole thing was weird because of the fact, remember, they weren't married, and yet he was her personal bodyguard in D.C., but the problem is he had no experience as a bodyguard, and he didn't have a license. Any money he was carrying a gun, which I don't think as an unlicensed security guard or police personnel in D.C., I believe that's highly illegal. I think they still have laws against concealed carry in D.C., no matter what. I don't know. The whole thing's just bizarre. And John, you know, put your political hat on. She's going to run against Wesley Bell. Do you think she's going to win? Do you think she has a chance?
I do not think she's going to win. I do think she has a chance. I think she's a credible candidate. And let's not forget, she unseated a legacy. She unseated a member of the Clay family when I didn't think she was going to win. She beat back a challenge from a guy named Steve Roberts, who's a credible man, who's a state senator. She beat back a credible challenge. But I think that her positions after she had been in Congress for 4 years, you're fond of pointing out her opposition to Boeing. And I think that, I do think that in the black community, I think they tend to give candidates a little bit more leeway on personal financial disclosure stuff, maybe spending a little money. I think it's easy for candidates to say, look, it's just little rinky-dink stuff. They're trying to get me on nitpicking campaign finance stuff. I'm here talking about the issues that matter on the ground in St. Louis. I think black voters will give candidates a little bit of leeway on that more than a West St. Louis County voter would. But I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I don't think she can beat Wesley, but I think she's a credible candidate for sure.
Well, the whole thing, I still come back, and John's going to go, here he goes again. Remember, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, what was in her first...
And where can you find the movie, Brad?
No. I was going to say, in her first term, she came out against the Department of Defense, as we used to know, now it's the War Department, and essentially was trying to defund all the weapons programs, which would specifically kicked Boeing's butt, because right there in North St. Louis County, they build the F-15, they build the F-18, they build the new Trump fighter, the F-47. I think they're going to build the new trainer, the T-7 up there. And she was essentially saying, going to get rid of all those jobs. Okay, like the number one employer in North County, and your congressman, you elect your congressman, and she's going to get rid of all their jobs. I think most people went, okay, this is stupid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's probably a little much. And I think if you're a black guy in a union at Boeing, or you're a white guy in a union at Boeing, and you tend to vote Democrat, you're an old-line Democrat, you look at it and say, Cori, what are you doing?
Yeah, what
and
in the
that
world?
guy or that gal at Boeing is probably sees how often Wesley comes out and supports Boeing and things like this and says, okay, Wesley's our guy.
Remember, I'm the one that said she was getting back in when she showed up at a union rally up there when they were still on strike up at Boeing. Remember that?
That's true, yeah. But in her defense, she just caught a ride with Josh Hawley.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
They had been hanging out. They had been hanging out at Charlie Chicken. And Josh is like, hey, do you want to swing by Bridgeton? And she's like, sure, I don't have anything else going on.
Yeah, let's go by and let's inhale that nice smell from the Westlake Quarry dump out there. Right. Okay. We have to take a break. We'll be back